Hey, what's up, everybody? I got Jon Walker here. I'm excited. Call him Jonny Walker. You can call him whatever label you want. But Jonny has an incredible background. He is just the toughest regiments, the toughest things the military has that people have ever been through. I mean, experience. He's been a part of it, right? He's been a part of Special Operations Command. He's been a Ranger, part of the 75th unit, right? Right, Jonny?
75th Ranger Regiment, yeah.
75th Ranger Regiment. And a lot of my brother Brent, you've heard me talk about him and his experience and those kind of things. And when I said, I really want to get some people that have, very serious backgrounds and kind of understand the way the world is working right now, things that are happening in the world, but also have, strong, leadership and business and organizational background. Our pursuit of wealth that we hear is, a lot more than people get this confusion that it's about money sometimes. Right. And money is a, I always say, Jonny, I say it's a byproduct of the work we do. It's a byproduct of doing things the right way and doing things, in the prepared, systematic way and creating. And there's so many components to it, but I think they get confused and thinking, of what money is and those kind of things. And so today, I want to talk about, all kinds of things, but, let's just start pretty simple and easy, how'd you like your pearl handled security we gave you?
Man, I will tell you, man, I loved it. Brent gave it to me, and so now that you get that, now you got to add other things to it. So I went and bought me a Wild Wild West drop holster, and I can't go with a cowboy hat yet, man. I'm a baseball hat kind of guy, but I've always had boots, but had to break that in. And that way, I love watching the Yellowstone. So a lot of my friends refer to me as the modern day Rip, the real life Rip. So
there you go.
I need to fix something, they give Jonny Walker Red Label a call, and then I go in and I try to take care of business. But man, I love it, man. It's sitting right about 10 feet from me, right in my little towel holder. So I made a little ghost cabinet. It looks like it holds towels, but that's my money maker in there.
That's pretty cool. I'm be excited to see pictures when you got it. I want to see them for sure. But that's how Brent actually, kind of described you when I first met him. And he said, like if you're trying to imagine what Jonny Walker is, and coming from Brent, that obviously he wouldn't say that about anybody in the world unless it's dead on. He goes, that's Rip, and that's the way you think about you and those kind of things. What makes you feel like? Where do you think that description comes from your friends on different things?
I think, like Brent, we laughed about this morning, I think over the years of almost 30 years of doing stuff, we move at the speed of war. I think, we're established that when we get a task and a purpose and a mission, man, it just gets done. And then, once you give me something, it's like, working for you, you say, hey, John, man, I need you to set me up with a hotel and a car and whatever. I mean, 10 minutes later, that's done. And you have all the information you need. You don't need to worry about that. I think most of the folks now that we have in the world now, I'll even use the millennials or whatever. A lot of those guys are waiting for something to happen for them versus them going out and making something happen for themselves. I use this analogy a lot with a lot of folks in my family, and some of these people, a lot of people think there's just a wolf and a sheep in the world. And that may sound good, but that's not the truth, man. Your brother Brent and me, we're in charge of the wolves. We tell the wolves what to go eat when the time comes. And that's why we're so successful. And, like you're using your brother, everybody always paws after him to get him to do something. Or when something happens, he's the fix-it guy. And, there's a very small percentage of folks in the military that they're the fix-it guys. And that's why it's so hard to get to that point because they only want to take a certain group of folks that you can trust and depend on. So I think that's what makes most folks like us successful. Because again, it's not, when you hear somebody say, well, I've got honesty and integrity, but they leave out that big word loyalty. Well, if you have the loyalty, that covers everything. You're loyal to the brand, to the folks that you work for, the team, and the effort. And then when it's successful as a business guy like yourself, it's the team that did it. It's not the individual that did it. He was just a small part of that.
It's a fascinating concept when you start talking about loyalty and you talk about integrity and those things, right? I think there's a lot of the understanding of selfishness, right? When it comes to certain things. And sometimes loyalty is about the letting go of selfishness. I also think sometimes, just integrity sometimes is a letting go of selfishness too, right? Because when it comes down to, decision making, it's if your decisions aren't pre-aligned with who you are, or it doesn't come down to your very DNA, people ultimately are going to make the selfish decision.
That's
And
right.
so, I don't know that, like, and they're crazy because I don't know that you can teach loyalty. I don't know that you can teach integrity, right? And so, like, even if somebody has different understandings of what integrity is because of cultural, backgrounds, but still, like, there's, like, those are things you either are or aren't. I don't know. Do you agree with that, or do you think differently
Yeah,
about
I
that?
100%. I mean, the bottom line is you got to learn to be a leader. You have to earn that part to be a leader. You're not born with it. I don't care what they say. You always hear that adage that, oh, he was a born leader. No, it's not. It's you have that ability in your heart to make the hard right versus the easy wrong. And if it looks like it's going to do something for yourself, well, Brent will tell you this as well. I heard all kinds of Vietnam type drill sergeants and leaders that were my, young NCOs when I was in there. Never is anything done for me. It's always for my soldiers. And if you have that
Mhm.
concept, and I'm sure you've heard Brent mention this before, they have in the Army, they say, keep it simple, stupid, kiss. So when you do that at a young leader level, whether you're a business owner, or whether you're a restaurant manager, or whether you're a platoon sergeant in a Ranger Regiment, your mind focus has to focus on what is the right course of action for my team. And if it's some of the things fit in the first course of action, and then say the second course of action, some things fit, you have to make that course of action work for the mission set and its mission statement. And I think that's where most people, they get hemmed up on that. They get stopped, and then they wait for someone else to kind of figure out what they're going to do. I mean, perfect example is you look at like a riot. You always have that one person on the bullhorn that's directing the traffic for everybody, and they got to get to that point where they're all spun up, and then they go out and destroy stuff. Versus just the masses are saying, we're just going to go do this. You always have that one or two voices that create that process. And you can have good bad judgment, and you can have really bad judgment. But again, you're going to have some of that leadership start at a young level.
I like that concept when it comes to the waiting. And you talk about, people who wait, and that waiting, the if thens, right? And you're preparing to do something. But that's a little bit different. Being prepared is not waiting, you're preparing, which means you're taking action on doing something. I see a lot of people, they get, like, if it's like a straight rope, right? And there's knots in the rope, and they get caught on the knots. And so that begins to keep them in action. A good example, I was talking with some of our marketing team yesterday, and like one of our projects is we do a lot of marketing advertising to raise capital, bring in money for the business, and a lot to bring in investors and those kind of things. But I've been working really hard with our marketing team to take our real estate marketing, which is bringing in deal flow, bringing in transactions and stuff into the company. And it's something we spend a lot of money on, but there's a series of actions I was kind of frustrated that hadn't been taken. Our
Right.
project manager calls me yesterday, and then follows up with the text. And she says, well, give me your priority list, right, for these things to be accomplished. And I said, well, I wouldn't give them to you if they weren't all priorities. If they weren't,
Right.
if I didn't want each and every one of them done, there's not, it's not, sometimes there is ABC priorities and different things that have to come first. But in that scenario, I was like, if you're waiting on any of them, then none of them are going to be accomplished, and none of them are going to get done. And I think there is a lot of that within that millennial generation. Like, we have a lot of 18 to 24-year-olds that have worked for us over the years. And I coached college baseball for a couple of years. And I think I can see that concept. And then as they mature and go through evolutions, but I see it 1 out of 10, right? That don't have that hang up. And I'm not sure where that is. You hear a lot of things like with Facebook and different things. So the social environment for them is different than the social environment for me and you. And I'm sure my social environment is even a little bit different than yours. But at the same time, like, we weren't raised on a social platform.
No, I don't even have Facebook. I have LinkedIn every so often. I turn it off because I don't want to form my own opinion about what I see and how I gain that information. But again, it's like what you said with your marketing folks. Those guys, they have to understand that, hey, there's a mission essential task list that you pushed out. That's important tasks that have to be done. Within that step, you got to back that process back to, hey, these are the subtasks that have to be occur for this task to be completed. And
Mhm.
so, and then also trying to think about as a leader, like we'll use your brother, if he was my sergeant major, I need to kind of think along the lines, if I've been with him a long time, how he thinks and how he operates and what right looks like for him. And then that way I can come to that conclusion, and it's easy for him. Because again, in your position right now, you don't have time to try to fix a problem. You've issued a task to someone and they have to fix that task. You may have to adjust it left to right a little bit, but it should be generally 85 to 90% correct for the company's mission. And I think going back to what we said earlier, what is your mission intent? What is RAD's mission intent statement? What's the mission statement look like? And everybody has to be on board with what that looks like for the companies, for success for the company, not individual success.
Yeah, one of our leaders said it fairly well recently. His name's Dustin Warren. He runs our like ranch operations and ranch acquisitions. And Dusty said it. He's like, you live in the future, and you have to live kind of in the future. And so I have to think, he's like, as I'm working with you, I have to start thinking about, because I have to live in the future. I have to think of, what's going to be a headache and a problem for our investors 6 months, a year from now. What's going to be a headache, a problem with our real estate 6 months to a year from now? How do I progressively think, 2 years from now? How do I address threats that are coming in the next, 90 days, to the company, and make sure that, we're cutting those off at the pass, right? You mentioned Yellowstone, right? The constant war they're in Yellowstone isn't reality. But there are all kinds of different types of, threats and different types of things, that you face, on the journey and stuff. If we had to do that kind of war like they have in Yellowstone, it'd be really hard to grow and build a business. But there's all kinds of different kinds of threats that you're constantly facing too. What do you think about, what's going on in the world right now? We're post-COVID world. We're in a hyperinflation world. There's the, Ukraine, Russia, war conflict. What do you think about, just in general, kind of just general feeling about kind of what's going on?
Well, I think, again, the biggest part that I agree with is there's 525 people that run our country. That's all the Senate and all the Congress combined. And they live in a very, very small bubble. And those people in that bubble are worth a bunch of money. I would say 96 or 97% of those people are millionaires, but they don't feel the burn of a guy that, say, is your marketing rep that has a child, and he's got to pay for daycare and the wife is home trying to homeschool. They don't see that narrative. So when you try to say something to them, they always cast doubt, and it doesn't make sense. No, that's not what's happening and whatever. But, again, when you elect people that have been in that bubble for their whole life, and we'll just say this. So our current administration, the guy that runs the country, I won't mention his name, but he's been in politics for almost 50 years. So if you were so squared away, why didn't we have all these problems fixed 30 years ago? Well, because you can't fix those problems. Sometimes a problem arises like COVID. It was done intentionally, and it was leaked intentionally, which I believe is the truth. But again, now you have to fix a problem that was generically started from a host country. And how do you fix that? Well, we didn't have the right people to fix that. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you could try to put your finger on, but there's no way to put your finger on any of it. You just have to have somebody in charge to go, okay, we got to get ahead of this, and we got to stop this where it's at, and we got to have a process to eliminate these steps. And I think a lot of people took that for granted, as they do with everything. They sit back and watch what's happening. I mean, you look at a guy that, makes maybe $15 an hour, and that was their new, hey, we got to do that. And he works at McDonald's and whatever, but now he's driving back and forth to work. His rent's gone up, his grocery bill's gone up, or if you can't get groceries, where you got to get them at. And oh, by the way, it costs him twice as much to fill his car up to go to work now. So, his option is, I can sit at home and not have to do it at all, and I get paid, so I can let someone else do that. So I don't think there's a whole lot of leadership in the world right now currently. Ukraine is a perfect example of that. He had those intentions for years. He just held off until the right time to do that. I think that's a horrible situation. I think humanitarian wise, for them targeting women, children, and old people in apartment buildings is absolutely, crippling. But is anybody going to do anything about it? And for me, the answer is no. I mean, you always say NATO, but NATO means the U.S. So, and it's always meant that. So, we have to have other people.
there's a line there that's scary, right? And so this is kind of, as I've kicked around this concept or idea with different friends and different colleagues, and with Russia being a nuclear power, being the other great nuclear power, besides us, right? And there's some other, but there's really very few true nuclear powers, in the world, and everybody kind of either aligns with one side or the other way with their nuclear weapons. And the line is like, how far can you push Russia before they choose that option, and so what's the line, what's the fear factor, and it's like there's a lot of people, they say, I've heard people say, well, Russia's being, they're being sanctioned, and they're being, their oligarchs are getting their yachts taken and different things. And I'm like, I don't want to be the person that messes with Russia, right? I think their KGB is probably this is just guesses for me, right? I don't have nearly the background you do by any means, but I think the KGB is probably really, very real. And I don't want to be the random diplomat that's making a scene about Russia. But if you're the country that's really going to war with them, then you're the country that's really going to war with them. I think you either have to make that choice or not. I don't know. It's like there's lines there. I mean, they're not afraid to kill their own people, right? So, which is scary, which is really scary when you think about it. And this is the greatest nuclear deterrent, right? Is you don't launch nukes because you don't want nukes launched at you, and you don't want your people to die. And so if they're not afraid to kill their own people, I mean, that's scary.
Well, I mean, you saw that in Syria, where they were gassing their own people. And I mean, when you get to that point, really the any kind of peaceful negotiations are pretty much, you don't I don't know how you fix that, and everybody says you got to have strength to have peace. But that sounds like it's a great statement. Like, again, when we're in high school and you had the high school bully that tried to take your money or whatever until you thumped on him, and you might not win the fight, but if you punch him in the face 3 or 4 times, he's not going to come back and ask for your lunch money anymore. He's going to pick a new target. And I don't think we've done that really effectively. In my opinion, and you talked to your brother about this, we have not really wanted to win a war that we've wanted to win since World War II, where we just bombed everybody back to the Stone Ages. And then that brought peace through strength. Now
peace throughout the world in a lot of ways.
That's right. If you've looked at anything from Vietnam, Korea, all the other things in the world, we go in there and we throw our weight behind it, but then we get political, whether it's left or right, and I blame both sides. They don't like the outcome. Well, you shouldn't have put us in the middle of that. Give me the tools to be successful and win with the rules of engagement that you give me. And then if I do that and I lose soldiers, then I have a mission statement. And guess what? War is horrible. I mean, I was talking to your brother about this morning, man. I got guys of mine that, 16, 17, 18, 19 deployments. And now they're getting ready to ramp up some more. So hell, I had 10. So when is the stopping point to make a good conscious decision on what right looks like? And I just don't know where that is right now. And throwing money at a problem is like putting a Band-Aid on a sucking chest wound. It's just not going to fix itself.
Well, I always start with there's a problem. Righteousness is the greatest way never to fix a problem. And so when there's a problem, you have to say, well, what's the problem? Where does the problem come from? Who's, how do we, it's all about a how. It's a series of questioning, right? And if you take a righteous attitude towards it, it's kind of like COVID. Like when COVID hit, I knew that nobody was going to get it right. There's nobody who's going to have a perfect solution. But whether it's left or right, nobody has said, hey, here's a real problem. And whatever solution we're going to come up with is going to be difficult and challenging. And nobody's going to have the perfect solution or perfect answer for it. But let's go work to find the best solution, right? And the fact that we went through a pandemic and it was still so partisan kind of blew my mind. It's kind of America usually, like 9/11 is a great example. When we really hit the fan, we come together and we let go of the partisanship. We let go of the left right thing, and we say, hey, let's create the best plans, create the best way to fix this problem. It's like in my company, I look at a problem and I say, okay, what's the problem, right? What's the issue? What's the challenge? It's like, if there's a problem, it's a reflection of leadership. So to me, it's always like my team, if they're having problems, it's a reflection of, my leaders. And if my leaders are having a problem, it's a reflection of me. and so that's kind of how I look at things. And so that righteousness is a great way not to fix it. And so with COVID, I've just seen a lot of righteousness, you know what I mean? And I'm talking about, the last administration and this administration. I talk about the judgment of the last administration. Now the judgment of this administration, I see a lot of righteousness, and that righteousness is never a way to fix a problem. In my opinion,
the bottom line is, and I think you're right on, man. I mean, you look at the media and social media and Twitter, just anybody that doesn't follow any of that stuff. It's like, they hated Trump at every level. Okay, well, got it, man. He got the presidency. He did it. But just come together to work. It's not a Trump issue. It's a country issue. The United States is our country. So we got to work for our country's good. I don't care. I've said this, I don't care who the president is. That dude don't run the show. There's other people underneath him that run this processes. And that was very apparent. The problem that I see that we have forgotten, I think for the past 15, 20 years, we've forgotten that the lower class, the middle class, and even some of the other classes of folks, they're still poor. They still live on the street. They're still homeless. There's still drug problems. There's still gang violence problems. There's still bad things happening to good people. And we get it. We cast a shadow on that, and we don't want to talk about it. So if we don't talk about it, it doesn't exist anymore. And that's not the case. You can't put a Band-Aid on a sucking chest wound. It's still a sucking chest wound. You got to fix that problem, and it has to be both sides have to agree to disagree, but have an adult conversation about stuff. What Trump did for me is, if he would have just been quiet and stopped tweeting and stopped acting like he always had to be on television and just be the president, that he would have been successful. I don't need to hear about what Nancy Pelosi drinks. I don't care about what Chuck Schumer does or whatever. I don't care about little Ted or whatever he said. Leave that mock snick stuff out of it. Our country needs leadership, whether you're Republican or Democrat. I supported Obama for 8 years when I was in the military. Did I agree with him personally? No. Did anything affect me from his decisions? No. I'm in a war. My job is to take care of the 147 dudes underneath me to make sure when I deploy with them, I bring them home to their families. And that's it. And your brother had the same vision. He's now, but your brother had 300 plus dudes that he's in charge of. His job is to make sure he brings them folks home to his family, whether it's a guy or a girl, what you do in your personal thing. If you're, if you have a girlfriend or you're a girl, whatever, man, that don't matter to me, as long as it doesn't affect your skill set at your work. And we've gotten so out of control with that. We've got to be, politically correct at everything, and everybody has to get a participation trophy. It can't be that way. That's not life. Life does not do that for you. And if you have those things that happen to you in your life, like the real world of reality is going to hit you right in the face when you can't pay your rent and your landlord tells you you're out. And that's just what life is about. So I think you get that.
Now you got the balance, right, between these things that are going on in the world. Like, I can go deep dive into conspiracy theory, like with some of the best of them, right? And like, you say things like, well, why is, the two richest men in America building, space shuttles to leave the world? And why are they buying more land than anybody else in America? And why does, one of them have a tunnel out of Los Angeles into the middle of the desert? And you can say, COVID-19 was just simply a test.
Right.
Coronavirus was just a test. They want to know how the world reacted to a true biological weapon, and you can dive down those rabbit holes, and you can like accelerate them. And sometimes, that acceleration helps you understand what worst case scenario can be, and I look at some of those things, but then you got to still live life. And so there's a delicate balance between being prepared, and at the same time, and looking at what's potentially possible, but then I still have to live life. And because you could be a hermit, you could go find a cave in the middle of the woods, or you could find a cabin in the middle of the woods in the middle of nowhere, but then you're not living life, and I got kids, and I got a wife, and I got family, and I got, people that want to live life too. So, and when I'm trying to protect them, I'm trying to find the balance. So how do you find, you've seen a lot scarier things in this world than I'll ever see, I'll ever know, I'll ever experience, I hope to God, in my life, during your time of service. And maybe even, afterwards. So, how do you keep that unique balance? Because for me, not right now, my brother is doing a great job with it, but I know, he's had, as I think all professionals do, have been through what you guys have experienced in life. You have to fight, to regain that balance,
Yeah,
so how do
I'll
you
tell
keep
you,
it?
the turning point for me was when I got wounded. I spent 9 months at Walter Reed, and everything from my life quickly, dramatically changed from being a physically fit, in my opinion, top of percentage of my career field, to not knowing if I'm going to have a leg, not knowing if I'm ever going to walk again, losing soldiers, just those things. And then, I tell people all the time, man, my pastor at my church said he wanted to go to Haiti and do a mission trip. And I'm like, well, hey, you don't got to leave the United States. You can only go one state up. You can go to Baltimore, Maryland, and sit in Walter Reed, and you would go in the trauma unit. If you can stay there for a week and you don't come out of that thing changed, then you're in the wrong career field as a pastor. That place broke me at every level, physically, mentally, spiritually, because again, you're hearing grown professional people like ourselves. They're in there crying, you're smelling people, you're hearing grown people cry. They don't know how to deal with things. There's a huge thing about, people taking their lives. Man, we have a huge problem with suicides on active duty as well as retirees, because you take them from the pinnacle of their game, and then they have nothing. And then, a lot of people succumb to, using drugs, drinking alcohol. I mean, your brother can talk people that we've known that they go from point A to point B, and I mean, they have all kinds of problems with driving on impaired charges, or they just throw their lives away. What I had to do is I had to tear myself down to the lowest part of where I was physically broken, where I almost took my own life, and I had to say, okay, something's up, man. I got to get some help. I got to talk to some people that can talk me off the ledge and tell me it's okay to cry. It's okay to have these feelings, but it's not okay to try to have those feelings and mask them with alcohol and drugs. So after I started getting that and getting my head right, I let a lot of stuff go. I let a lot of the political fray go. Man, I can't control what's going on in DC. Heck, I can't even control what's going on in Lillington. All I can control is my wife and my children. What I can do also is, like I told you on the phone several months ago, is I can offer you loyalty as a friend, like with your brother. If your brother called me at 2 a.m. and he needed me, I'm at his house. That's just it. And it, that's just how I think it's helped me become peaceful and have an inner peace. And now, me and my wife laugh about this now. Really, the only thing that gets me fired up is if I'm running out of suet nuggets or bird feed for my outdoor to watch the hummingbirds or my birds out there. So, but a lot of people, they get frustrated with things that they can't control or change, and then you see them on social media, and you hear it all the time. I mean, two guys got in a fight on Facebook, and then they took it to the next level. And they met in the parking lot, and one of them shot each other. Well, man, I got too much time on my hands to worry about the naysayers of Facebook or Twitter or whatever. I just don't have any passions for it. Now my passion is helping people fix things, fixing problems, and being mature, and then riding out in the sunset, man. I want to be 95 years old, man, riding in my golf cart on the golf course, and maybe drinking a cold beer and watching young kids hit balls in the woods. That's my goal when I get older.
Man, I hear what as I walk through life and I look at different people, I have conversations. So my wife's brother Gabriel started a restaurant called the Chicano in Hong Kong, and it's been we laugh because it's the single worst time in the history of the world to start a brand new restaurant. About 6 to 8 months ago, and he's doing all right. But he's we were on a conversation, and we were talking about and he was getting into that place where and it's his first business, right, for himself, and he's on this entrepreneurial journey. And it doesn't matter what you think your mindset is before you start a business. When you actually are in the business, there's a whole different set of parameters. I think it's probably the same, in the military. Until you've been deployed, I don't think you can, no matter how hard I think about it now, no matter what training I went through and different things until someone's deployed, I don't think they really truly know what it is. You can't have a full understanding. So he's running his business and he's just talking about the government this, and when the government stops doing this and the government stops doing that. And I said, so man, you got to stop. So you got to stop. So there ain't nothing they do, ain't nothing they say, ain't nothing, no rule they make can affect your business. He goes, well, everything they do affect my business. I said, no. I said, only you affect your business. All you can do is know
That's
what
right.
the rules of the game are and play the game.
That's right.
Because if you can't control what you cannot control, what's out of your, so, you know, but he's doing good. But it was just that similar kind of conversation. It's just like, there's nothing you can control that, you know, the government is going to do what they're going to do. Right. You can make your own decisions. And I mean, granted, I moved to Florida because of some of my beliefs. So there's some things that I could control, but there's different, you know, there's different types of control, you know, ability to control your own environment. That was still within my environment, still within my power to be able to move the world that way for myself. I think that for us, as I look at, you know, the coming time, one of the concepts I wanted to chat with you about, because this is some that I don't know if it, I wouldn't call it my theory. I'm sure someone came up with the theory. I'm sure it exists somewhere. But a theory kind of I have about the world a little bit right now is I see everything kind of accelerating. And I see, you know, when I started thinking about it in the beginning, I think, you know, we've had civilizations completely disappear from the world before. And I call it, you know, I think there's something, you know, I call it a form of acceleration theory. And I'm sure there's some actual scientific term that means something else called acceleration theory. But it's, you know, when we started having recorded history, then you started to be able to have a knowledge stack. And before recorded history, all you had was a verbal knowledge stack, but that's not the same as true knowledge stack. And I think as different tribes or different communities began to interact, you started to have this kind of compounding effect of knowledge from a history standpoint. And then from there, you know, you fast forward through revolutions, you know, industrial revolution, you know, all kinds of different revolutions through the time. But then you get to the computer age and you start to come with technological innovation revolutions, and you start to have computers, and now knowledge continues to start to compound and start to stack. And I think that causes economies to go up and down faster and faster because of this, right? And then now that politics can't even keep up with technology, and that's not even a, you know, negative towards politicians, just they can't keep up, right? With things that are happening with artificial intelligence and you know, everything from the metaverse to, you know, something as simpler as a computer chip, right, making a big difference into whether it takes, you know, a month or a year to get a new car, right, or new computers and different things, and then we no longer control those things. And so I just see everything speeding up, and I see, you know, every gap, you know, that existed, that we would say, hey, here's about how long it takes for a full economic cycle. We're, you know, roughly every decade we're having an economic crash and we're having a boom. And I think, you know, we had a crash in 2020, we had a boom in 2021, 2022. I think we're going to continue to accelerate, you know, in a bull market, but people don't even really understand hyperinflation because America's never truly gone through super hyperinflation. And so now, you know, there's these new things that are speeding up. But for me, a lot of this comes back to, you know, this technology and just everything speeding up. And I even think in some ways the weather and climate things are speeding up. So, you know, I know that there's a plan, you know, that's out there. I've, you know, heard the 2049 plan from China, right? And I've read, you know, some of those kind of things. And so the utilization as if different types of technological things as a war asset versus bombs and guns and different things. So I just wonder what you think about that theory and the China thing. Fire away.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, and it almost brought me back to a point where I remember watching this. One of the things that made me really join the Army, you know, the Rambo movie, the first Rambo movie came out, you know, really, I think it was the second one. But, you know, one of the catchphrases of the movie was like, Rambo, all this technology in this room is for you. You know, all these computers, all of these tracking systems and all this other stuff. This is the greatest brain in the world. And he said a comment that really drew my attention. It's like, I always thought the brain was the best weapon you always had. You know, you got to have that thought process. You know, algorithms can produce everything that's data related, but you got to have a guy to go out there and put the rubber to the road and do the actual mission. And what we do is we, as a country, you know, our government, we're probably 15 years behind on technology, computer related technology for AI. But what other countries are, they're 25 years ahead of us on all that stuff, and we're losing horribly because we're not managing our school systems better. We're not predictable about how we can get some educational concepts. We have fights about critical race theory, or whether I should be teaching certain things in the third grade versus the sixth grade. No, teach them what you're getting exposed to technologically wise, and you'll be good to go. What we do is they move so fast that they pass all the small things by, and those are what you said earlier. Those are the ankle biters that get you as a business owner. You have to control the speed of how you operate. If you try to get too ahead of your skis, every mission that you have planned will fail. Brent, and when you talk to your brother, all I needed is a picture of who I'm going after and where I'm getting picked up. I can figure everything else out in the middle. And because usually something's going to go wrong and you're going to have to change the plan. But when people are trying to operate so fast in life, my wife and I make a joke about it. You can go watch a baseball game. You pay hundreds of dollars to go see a professional event, and they always pan the camera around, and people are on the phone or they're talking on the phone, like at a World Series game or whatever. And you just paid $300-400 to go watch this game, but you're on the phone. You're missing everything you just paid for. Perfect example for that, Dutch, is when Coach K did his last game at the indoor stadium at Duke. Tickets were going for maybe $5,000 a ticket. And I personally watched a guy that I know, I went to high school with. He's got a lot of money, and he was on his phone the whole game. So did you actually pay to see Coach K's last game, or were you doing your social media and staying on Facebook or whatever? So you're missing your life. Just like the movie Click, even though Adam Sandler did it, and he's a hilarious guy, but Click really is true. You're going so fast, you're forgetting all the small things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, I realized with my children, right, that the time I have with them is just so short, and I mean, like, short in the sense that they're not children for very long. I have 5 and 6 year old and boys, and I look at it and like, I see a picture of them, when they were like 3 years old doing soccer yesterday. And I was like, they don't even look like the same. This not even looks like the same human being in some ways as they were just 2-3 years ago. And yeah, I still recognize them, but at the same time, but how fast it goes when you look backwards, right?
That's it.
When you look forward, time can slow down a little bit, but when you're really in the moment is where time truly slows down. And a lot of people, you start thinking like, when you start, like, you're getting mystical or you're getting different things, but if you actually can live in the full presence of like that exact moment, time does actually slow down, and the concept of time does slow down, and you're not sped up, right? And I think that kind of comes back to, baseball. I think that was, a goal for me when I played, was to slow everything down and be perfectly present, but I didn't know how to accomplish that, right? At 18, 19, 20 years old, the way I wish I would like to have. But at the same time, as I go forward in life, I try to slow down with my family or slow down with my children when I'm with them, so I can expand that amount of time I have with them. But then there's still that balance, because if you're not working towards the mission, the other mission, right? And so you're running multiple missions all the time. So like for me, I have my, mission with my children and my wife and my family. And then I have, my business mission. And then I have my greater, life mission and purpose. And so there's a lot of different things, as those run, but giving each of those their due interest is, creating that equilibrium and that balance in life. And so like when we got into like American Survivalist Project, a great example is, it was just my wife saying, we need a plan B. We need something else. We need something more than just what we have, every day. And those of you, who are real familiar with American Survivalist Project, I don't need to go through a detailed explanation, but essentially, for us, it's just, if everything in the world goes wrong, we're safe. We have security. We have a place to go to. We have connections, resources, community, right? It's always one of my favorite lines in a movie, when might be getting the name wrong, but Liam Neeson, right, says, what would happen, I was, if someone took your daughter, and it's like, I have a special set of friends with a special set of skills, to safeguard me and my family and safeguard, those kind of things. And so we started realizing that there was more to that, because I've never been as prepared as I am now for anything in life, and I felt like for a long time in life, I was running behind. And I always felt like I was running behind. Like I knew what I wanted to accomplish, but I always kind of felt like I was like climbing, like those water wheels that you see,
Yep.
in old movies. It's like I'm climbing the water wheel, but I'm going the wrong direction on the water wheel and I can't get anywhere, like an escalator. Let's make it simpler for the modern world, an escalator. But I'm going the wrong direction on it. And so, as I started to kind of shift the world, my own view of the world and my own view of different things, it's like the escalator kind of stopped where it wasn't going against me, and then it started to go with me in the right direction. But I also think what I realized a long time ago is when I prepare, there's really, the emergencies seem not to happen.
Right.
For you, for your own family and stuff, what do you do, from a preparation standpoint, and I don't know, do you actually fear like a nuclear thing, with Russia and Ukraine, or is that not a fear you have?
No, I don't think the nuclear option is going to happen. I think, again, I'll just say it, Putin, he says he'll do it, but he's scared because, again, that's going to bring all kinds of consequences for him. What the danger of this is they've already done it before. It's done in Syria. There'll be some chemical play in it. Again, that's going to happen. And that's a horrible tragedy. I mean, here's the big thing. I mean, you already might have a nuclear issue, and it's happened before with Chernobyl. I mean, when they had the first nuclear fallout, I mean, that place was condemned and it was horrible. Well, that might happen again. And now, fast forward, that thing's 3 times as big as it was before. And then you look at the European continent, that's 1/3 of the energy that's getting sent to these folks. So that's not affecting just Ukraine, Belarus, Germany. I mean, it's all up that coast. So, I think the calmer heads are going to come back. Again, I'm pulling back from Putin. Putin's a cagey guy, man. He's a smart guy. Whether he's lost his mind and
well, there's no world, if the world doesn't exist, there's nothing for you to be in charge of.
That's right.
And you get a lot of insane dictators with that hunger for power, and if you destroy the world, there's nothing for you to be have power over.
That's right.
Maybe that's
well,
a thing.
And I'll segue into, so you look at Putin. Putin has done nothing but been spy. He's been a spy his whole life.
Yeah,
he's a KGB guy. He's a KGB. So,
and spying is about surviving.
He's worked in a world that's all about control. All right. But you can say the same thing about the United States. It's all about who controls what. And they say it every time we have an election. Everything has to be controlled by the right side or the left side. It's all about control of votes. So, your argument is moot. If you're going to get mad at Putin, you should look yourself in the mirror if you're going to throw a rock in a glass house, because we got our own problems we got to fix. Every 2 years, you're going to see 9,000 ads of I can do this better than him or whatever. And none of that's true. They get there and they make a lot of money and they never do anything for you. So they just want your vote. They don't want anything else but that and your money. But I think more along the lines of a chemical play, and maybe some hypersonic and the big thing is they've got these new things that are, these hyperbaric grenades and all these different bombs that suck vacuum, and they've already used one. You've seen it, but I just think right now with the kids and the older people and the stuff, I mean, you look at Mariupol, man, I've been there. I mean, that place where I was at, I stayed and it looked like the made up Hilton there. I forget the name of it, but right there, we did some training, and now it looks like, looked like World War II. There's nothing there. It'll take years to rebuild for anybody to actually viably live in that place. And then you got to deal with all the other things, the rotten, the disease, the whole 9 yards, man. So this is going to be centuries of trying to repair something that could have been fixed easily at the table.
So do you think the greater threat, to, our day-to-day freedom is what? What do you think that is?
I think for me,
a lot of people, go ahead.
I think for me, my day-to-day is I go about my day and I don't watch news anymore. I don't turn into Fox News. I don't have any Facebook, Twitter, anything like that. Our country's going to operate just like it did in 1970. The only thing that fast forwards things now is social media. I think if you got
information warfare.
That's right. So I can still go to the movies. This is what people don't understand, and your brother will get this. It'll be a game changer if I try to go to Holly Springs or Raleigh, North Carolina to go to a movie, and I got to run through IEDs and a complex ambush. That changes everything. I don't have to do that now. I can still order food and go to a restaurant. Maybe I have to follow the rules, like you said, with wearing a mask. Maybe there are people that are really nervous about catching something. I don't know what their health requirements are, but I'm still going to be able to go get food at the food line, or go to a movie, or go to a shopping mall, or me and my wife take a walk, or I drive my golf cart, or whatever. That's still going to happen, and that's going to happen in 10 years from now. Only thing will be different is my golf cart might be faster, it might be bigger, it might have step stool on it because I'm old. But the process is all those things are still going to happen. It's just that you got to let the outside noise kind of escape, because everybody has the opinions and they always know what's going to happen, but none of that ever comes true, and that's on both sides.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about, people talk about China a lot, and they talk about, information war, the war of innovation, with them and those kind of things. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, you think about it, we go back to the school piece. I mean, China kicks our ass in technology. I mean, hell, most of the stuff we get comes from China. So if there was a real problem, and this is even with Trump, it was a real problem, we should have fixed it 30 years ago, but we didn't. You try to be friends with them, and you got to make some, they make everything. I mean, literally, you think about any toy, anything you buy from Amazon, most of those parts are made in China. The American made thing went out in the 70s. And don't fool yourself by listening and say, we're going to bring it back, because they don't bring it back. That's why all these companies go overseas, so they get cheap labor, so they can enhance their bottom line to make sure it's good. So if calmer heads would prevail, you could try to work a deal out with folks, but it always has to be, the right don't get what they want, and then the left don't get what they want, and then the right's wrong and the left's wrong. Well, somebody's got to come to the middle and try to build this again, like I said earlier, for the United States of America. What looks good for the United States of America?
What do you think about what do you think about the government stepping in and saying, look, Apple, one of the richest companies on the planet, and you're an American company, and maybe they don't see themselves that way. I don't know. I don't know their board meetings. I don't, sit behind closed doors and know what it is. And so this is just, a hypothesis. What if the American government said, look, you're an American company, you're one of the richest companies on the planet, you have a product that is, spread worldwide. What if the American government said you have to make these cell phones here? If
I don't think it would ever happen, and that would be wrong, because again, your ideal of your company, we'll just use your company. Mm-hmm. You had a thought, and you had a process, and you had a mission, and you developed your company. Why should I come in and step in and tell you who you can talk to? If I go through the right rules that were established by our government, and we'll just go back. Remember Microsoft, 40 years ago, they were mad at Bill Gates. They hated Bill Gates. And so what they do, the government came in and broke his company up. Said, you can't own all the patents. It's like the old phone companies.
Well, Apple might not exist if the government didn't do that.
That's correct. So you can't take a process and then somebody comes up with something that you don't like because you didn't have a process in it, you don't get paid on it, and now you got to stop their sale. I don't think that's right. That's why we have
So do you think the government uses other methods to influence American businesses doing American products and American goods? Do you think the government should influence that in different ways?
In theory, but what you just called them, they call them lobbyists. So these guys get in there and they make a lot of money, and then they say, hey man, I know how to do the ITAR regulations for you to be able to import export. So if you could pay me this, I'll help you do the management of overseas shippings and goods and services. So I think we get too much into the weeds. Our government gets in too much into the weeds of business lives. You establish what that construct looks for, what's right and wrong, and what's legal and what's illegal, and you stick with that. Perfect example is you look at the mafia, man. This is they really, if you look at the business model, man, they had it right. They didn't have to do anything. They owned all the ports, they owned all the sanitary trash trucks, and so they went to those people and said, hey man, you either live tomorrow and drive your truck, or you pay me 20% of what you pick up. And that's what they did, and that worked for a long time until the government came in and did that. But really, if you think about it, the government still kind of does that to a lot of different companies. And that's why if you always see, and we'll talk business, you always see all the same defense companies keep winning these huge contracts, and it's never the little guy. Rad could come up with something that changes the world on IT, but you're never going to get to that point because you don't have those places and people in those places to make those decisions. So,
how do you, I mean, it's just, and these are just, think tank, philosophies, right? I don't know that I have an opinion about some of them. Maybe I do. I mean, I like Americans buying American real estate. I don't know that foreign governments and foreign individuals, non-American, should be able to buy American real estate. That's just a personal opinion I have.
I agree with that.
I just, I don't think that non-American should be allowed to buy American businesses. And have significant ownership in American businesses. And people can sit here and say, well, then, that forgoes, foreign capital investment, right? Which, goes against innovation and goes against, spurring those kind of things. But then I go back to, there's more than enough money in America to invest into American businesses, and, you get into the stock market and the trading of stocks and the back and forth of stocks. And it's not, they've gone past the point of those being, investments or reinvestments or capital investments into American businesses. And it's one of the reasons I love part of the concept of RAD is, every dollar that's invested with us, we go and invest it into American real estate. So I do love that part of it. And it didn't take a government regulation, right, for us to go and start doing that. And we have, a lot of Chinese American investors, and we have a lot of American, I guess, they're all American investors, right? But I look at that just because I look at, I've seen, Chinese, foreign Chinese, right, individuals, buying American real estate in droves. But I've also seen other, powers buying American real estate in droves. And, for me, it's not my favorite. It should be, for all Americans. And
I agree with that.
And there's a difference in people. Well, if someone's, working to be an American, a citizen, and they have a green card and other things, I think that's kind of a different, they're working to become a part of, what we are. And I believe in that in different ways. And so when it comes to American businesses, I think I have a real challenge with, when there's people in America that are hungry, there's people in America that are struggling. I think I've just always kind of had that, and I know we need to invest in the world, right? Because without an investment into the world, I think that there's, the world deteriorates. I truly believe that. And if without, different, but at the same time, we invest into the world because we're reaching into the world, right? But then, like, for me, it's all about circles, right? And so, here in our country, we have our circle, and then we take that and we reach into the world. And I think what we're doing sometimes is we're allowing not only some of our most valuable resources to leave our circle, which is no longer reaching into the world, it's leaving our circle. And then at the same time, we're allowing other, right, entities and other powers to come in and take, from our circle. And I think there's a lot of that's very difficult to understand fully, because there's a lot of extraordinary wealth and power that goes beyond, I think the everyday concept of the everyday person, including myself.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're tracking. I mean, what you said too is there's a lot of people, man, the Constitution, if you think about this, man, the Constitution was written, them guys thought way outside the box, man, when they wrote that thing. I mean, they were on a different level, where they wrote down things to try to pin down government. And those guys were absolutely physically smart when it comes to the overreach of government. But again, you look at what you just said. I mean, we have rules that are established, the laws in the books. And if you pick apart the and the thee and the us, and it changes the connotation of what does that really truly mean? And you get a lawyer that can argue that fact in front of a judge to make him, well, hey, the thee really didn't mean thee, it really meant them. And then thee back in the old days was me, and so they change it, and then some judge rules on it. So we got lots of problems that we need to fix, but I don't think it's going to take something massive. And I said this to your brother about this too, 9/11 was a horrible thing. So Dutch, I had gotten out of the Army I was out of the Army for almost 10 years, and I was working for the state of North Carolina as a special agent for alcohol law enforcement, and I hated it. I did not like, I could do the work on the road, but when it came to the court system, that was not my cup of tea, man, because it was now against me. So I went back in the Army. I went back in the Army. I was 42 years old because I knew that was my bailiwick, and I knew the military, and I knew that where my skill set mattered. And it's like what we had talked about earlier with you. You establish a company, but underneath that pinnacle, you got all your minions down there. And all the knowledge base of the years of stuff that you've done in business, you can train one of your guys. So you might never know. You might have one of your friends that one of your employees that works marketing in 10 years may call you and say, hey, you changed my life. So now I own my own business, and I want to follow the footprint that you started. And that's what made me go back in. And 9/11 was a big part of that. What I look at, and a lot of people forget this part, they always want to throw the racial stuff out and white versus black or whatever. And I think that's all crap. I don't see color. I see man and woman. I see, are you a good person? Are you a good steward? Do you take care of your neighbor? Do you shake hands? Do I call you sir or call you ma'am? But what I do know for true is 3,300 and some change died in a matter of an hour and 50 minutes. And I don't know, there were hundreds of different, nationalities. Who knows what those different nationalities were, but they all got killed in an hour and 38 minutes and some change, and their families were forever broken. And that pissed me off because our system in place in the government and our intelligence world kind of knew that was kind of happening, but they turned a blind eye to it because, again, what you said earlier, they're moving at the speed of government and thinking that, and then they're missing all the ankle biters. And now you can see all the documentaries coming out about, we knew these guys were doing this. They knew, they had FBI tell them this. And then some guy that was in a leadership position said, hey, we don't need to do that. No, that's wrong. We need to slow down and listen, look, and smell about what our surroundings look like, because that's what we learned in the military. Because as soon as you do that, you're going to figure out, hey, that don't look right. That guy told me the other day, all he wants to do is learn how to take off on a plane, and he doesn't want to learn how to land it. Well, that should be a red flag. So there's a lot of things that our government does that I wish they wouldn't do. And I would want to be in a political position. There's no way I could do that. I don't have that bone in my body that wants to do that. But, we're in a hard time right now, where real people have to make real decisions that affect real people. And when I see a kid in our own school system that doesn't have lunch money because his parents don't have enough to feed him, that's our problem. When we have homelessness in LA and where you just came from, my brother-in-law lives in San Diego.
That's gross.
Yeah. So, when you see kids and or that don't have money, that and as soon as they see that, and then there are other kids that have money, or they might have arterial motives about what they're going to do, they bring them in. That's how gangs start. That's how the stuff happens. And so we can fix that. We can fix that now, because we have people that right now, I guarantee you, there's somebody that, and we see it all the time. He's homeless, living in Lillington, North Carolina, living underneath a freaking bridge or whatever, and someone can help that guy and feed him and give him a warm jacket or whatever. But we don't do that. We want to fix a problem that's 5,000 miles from us that doesn't have, really, to be honest with you, shit and shinola with what I'm doing. And we could fix something, but we don't, because you want to have that political footprint and say, look what I did for this. And that's not what it's about. It's about taking care of the United States of America. And even what you said about, people coming into work, the Hispanic population coming in. You look at most of the extremely difficult jobs that are being done, whether it's road construction, building construction, roofing, everything that has to do with a skilled labor, 90% of that is being done by Hispanic. And most of those folks, I would say a large portion of those folks, just want to work because there's no work where they came from, or there's huge issues with government corruption, drugs, gangs, and stuff. And they want to leave that, and so they can provide something for their family, which is a better life. So We've known that problem existed since I've been old enough to know about it in the 70s. And, you know, it's like the war on drugs. I mean, this is a perfect example. If you ever watched American Made with Tom Cruise, that movie about him flying drug money, and then that turned into running guns and drugs. And then, of course, you watch some of these other movies like Charlie Wilson's War. All right. Well, Charlie Wilson's War, we funded that fight. And then we screwed the pooch on that one. And that turned in for the Afghanistan and the Taliban hating America because we broke a promise to them. And then what did we do after Charlie Wilson's War? We turned right into that Contras, Sandinistas, and Contras, and how the war on drugs is, and so on and so forth. And I'm telling you right now, the drug problem ain't ever going to go away. There's too much supply and demand for it. And the gun issues, the illegal gun issues ain't going to go away because there's too much supply and demand for it until you fix those laws and you make other people understand that, you know, everything is fentanyl related now. It's you're just spinning your wheels, and it's a never ending. Like you said, I'm in the Stairmaster in Planet Fitness, and I'm staying stationary and I'm watching 3 hours of freaking Yellowstone, but I've moved 2 feet for 2.5 hours and I'm still in the same place. And that's what our government does sometimes.
So that was a good one. I mean, you got on a good, what we call it, transcendental, you know, just absolute stream of consciousness right there. And I enjoy hearing, you know, you just dumping it out and getting it out and sharing, you know, so many things that, you know, I can find congruency with, right? And I think, you know, no politician, I think, ever has, you know, the easy job. And I think probably a lot of them get involved in it, at least a portion of them get involved in it for the right reasons in the beginning. And then they're, you know, left with, you know, climbing the you know, Mount Rushmore. And so, you know, it's one of those things that you know is interesting, and how we go forward is, you know, you have to keep going forward in life. And how can we affect things? I think, you know, each person has to make those decisions, and it's fascinating. You know, imagine all the resources we put out into the world. If we put those resources directly into American children, you know, what would our world look like in 15 years, you know, 10 years? Because reality is, my kids
absolutely.
5 or 6 years old, 10 years from now, you know, they're already built into what they're going to become by the time they're 25, 30 years old someday. And
oh yeah, and you know this too, just from what you said. So you look at the teachers. We'll just use the teacher. So remember a good teacher that you had when you were a kid. You still remember that teacher. She taught you, or he taught you something. So those teachers teach these kids to become lawyers, doctors, maybe presidents. You never know. But the teacher's salary still stays capped. You know, and then you get mad because the teachers that you get from college may not do the right thing. Maybe they have issues with children. Maybe they get arrested. Maybe they have, you know, a relationship with a child. So you're lowering your standards to try to get folks, but then you get the right folks and you don't want to pay them. So they go find another job. So it's like a, you know, like you said, the rabbit hole, man. You're like a hamster on a wheel, man. You're saying one thing, but your actions show something else totally different. So I think there has to be a lot of changes. The social media, our social environment needs to change. Everybody's so bad about everything. You can't say anything. You got to worry about if you say, hey, man, I voted for Trump, and you worry about getting bashed in the head with a brick. That's got to change, man. That whole process changed. I'll tell you 2 things that I loved about being in the military. Your brother will tell you. There's 2 things that I wore my uniform that meant the absolute most to me. That was the United States flag and the U.S. Army name tape. Everything else that I had in my life, man, that didn't mean anything to me. I belonged to an organization that supported and defended the United States of America's Constitution. And I was part of the big brand, Uncle Sam. And everybody that I worked for followed those same guidelines. And that's the part that I take great pride in. I mean, you can be a Special Forces guy, you can be a Delta guy, you can be a Navy SEAL, or you can be a MARSOC Marine, or you can be the truck driver that drove those guys to point A to point B. But if you don't have that guy, that team stuff is not successful. And that's where the military gets it, is that if I have PFC Smith taking my guys on a mission, and he's going to make sure that if somebody gets hit and he's not part of my unit, he's going to do everything he can to do the medical stuff and take care of them at the best of his ability. And I don't even know that kid. So what organization can you have that in where I just met you 2 minutes ago, and then I'm coming to see you and I just got shot, and you're going to do everything you can to make sure that I get off that battlefield and I survive. And those are the things that we look at.
Well, I think that's American, right? And I believe in that culture with everything that I am. We're getting a little background, but we're, we made it through a solid hour plus. So I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate the time, appreciate the things you shared. And just giving me your time, which is, incredibly valuable in this, world that we live in. Just thank you. Great gratitude for, your service and your time spent, but thank you for the last hour you spent with me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, man. I appreciate it, man. And all your team that's doing all this stuff, I appreciate them as well, because that's what makes the machine work.
I mean, it's pretty amazing. Our, 24, 48 hours ago, we knew we were going to have, our podcasts and different things, and they set everything up and got everything loaded and got everything ready. And, with my move to Florida, it threw them out of their, comfort normal box, and they adapted and adjusted. So I have gratitude for them too. So absolutely. Thank you guys that they're here with me. And thanks for Vincent, who made a lot of effort as well as a part of it. And thank you, Brent, for setting this up too. So, but that's it, brother. Thank you, man.